السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأنبياء والمرسلين. My brothers and sisters, we are about 1 week into this month of Ramadan. We've had a few days where we felt the hunger, the thirst, and the difficulty that sometimes comes along with the start of the month of Ramadan. And I want this khutbah, this reminder, to be an opportunity for us to be able to reflect on why we go through this exercise of staying hungry and thirsty and staying away from other things for a whole month. Why we've done it so far and why we're going to do it for another 3 weeks. And this is something that comes up quite often in either our workplace or school, or people will generally ask you at exhibitions or stalls. They'll ask you, why do you fast? And quite often we'll have a number of reasons that we will give as a response to that. We'll say it's something that's good for our health. Or we will say that it is something that helps us relate to people who are less well off than we are. It helps us feel the hunger of people who feel like this throughout the whole year. But in reality, my brothers and sisters, I think none of these are the reasons why we fast. I think we simply fast because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to fast. Because I want you to think about this. If Allah had not made it obligatory for us to fast, there would be very few of us that would fast consecutively for 30 days for a whole month like we do. This brings us to the next question. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask us to fast? Why does Allah tell us not to eat and drink during the day? What's the point of this exercise? And again, there are many reasons that we hear. But ultimately, it is Allah who has made it obligatory for us to fast. And it is Allah who, when He makes it obligatory for us to fast, He tells us why He wants us to do it. And that is so that we can achieve a thing called Taqwa. And this is a verse that's very well known, and it's repeated often in this month. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O of those of you who have believed, Kutiba alaykumus siyam, fasting has been made obligatory upon you. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum, just like it had been made obligatory on the people before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may achieve taqwa. Which is the main topic of this reminder. What exactly is taqwa? And how does fasting help us achieve it? Now, most often the word taqwa is translated to mean piety or fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I'm going to use fasting as an example to explain what I think it really is. And I want you to think back to the last few days. I want you to station yourself at about 5:55, 6 o'clock in the evening. And you've been fasting all day, and you're starving. and you're in the kitchen either helping to make iftar or you're making it, or you just happen to open the fridge or you come across something that's sitting there to eat or drink, and there is no one there, and there is no one that will know, and you really just want to eat something, but you don't. And you don't because you are aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching what you are doing. You are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are making a decision to do something or not do something on the basis of Allah watching you and being mindful of what Allah has asked you to do. That is what taqwa is. It is being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time. Being aware of Him and keeping Him in mind all day, whenever you are doing something, whenever you are making a decision. And the way you develop this during Ramadan is that you constantly, all day long, keep yourself away from something that Allah has told you to stay away from. And so you are reminded of Allah all day long. In fact, you don't just develop taqwa, you develop a very high level of it, because you are stopping yourself from doing something that outside this month of Ramadan, outside the timing of fasting, things like eating and drinking would be completely permissible. And the whole point of this exercise is so that you can then use this development, this awareness of Allah outside the context of eating and drinking, and outside the context of Ramadan in your daily life throughout the rest of the year. The reward of fasting is not because you did not eat or drink. It's because you fulfilled the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You didn't disagree with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what He had commanded you to do. You didn't think, no, hunger's not good for me, these are very long days, I'll make an exception. You established that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to do something, and you did it. To emphasize again, the whole point is to attain this taqwa so you can use it in other aspects of your life when making other decisions. So when you are about to buy or sell something, and someone asks you whether the item that you are selling is defective, and you know that it has a defect, you are conscious that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded you to tell the truth, and He is watching. When you are submitting your forms, your taxes, your self-assessment, business, whatever it is, and you have to write details down on it, you are aware that Allah knows whether you are telling the truth or whether you're not. When you are perhaps about to enter a relationship, or you are in a relationship that perhaps is not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are conscious that it is something that displeases Allah. When you are thinking of buying a house or a car, and you're thinking about how you might want to finance it, you are conscious that there are some things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed as permissible and some things as not permissible in transactions in your religion of Al-Islam. And just how in the month of Ramadan you were able to stay away from eating and drinking because Allah had told you to do so, you then begin to stay away from things that Allah has told you to stay away from during the rest of the month and the rest of the year. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that whoever does not give up false speech and acting upon it and ignorance, then Allah has no need of him giving up his food and drink. And Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, he said that fasting is not only abstaining from food and drink, it is also abstaining from lying, falsehoods, and idle pursuits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to follow His command. That is the purpose of fasting. Al-Ghazali rahimahullah said that it should be noted that fasting is of 3 degrees. There is the fasting of the common people, there is the fasting of the elite, and then there is the fasting of the elite of the elite. And the fasting of the common people is to be able to refrain from food and drinks and the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed to stay away from specifically during the times of fasting, the things that invalidate your fast. The fasting of the elite is when you expand this and you refrain your other organs, your hearing, your sight, your tongue, your hands, your feet, from staying away from things that Allah has made impermissible throughout the whole year. And the fasting of the elites is when one person completely frees themselves from concerns that are unworthy and thoughts that deal with just this dunya. So as we go forward into this month over the next 3 weeks, I want you to think about what level of fasting you are currently at, and what perhaps you can do to increase that level of fasting. And is your fasting increasing you in your awareness and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ultimately, are you thinking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout your day and throughout the month and throughout the whole year in the same manner as you think of Him when you are hungry? أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.